everyone, and welcome to CKPL's Virtual How-To Festival, where we show you how to learn something new in 20 minutes or less. Today, I'll show you how to regrow kitchen scraps. It's a simple thing to do to help boost your winter vitamin intake, as well as help the pocketbook when buying groceries. It's also an easy family activity that anyone at any age can participate with. There will be no kit for this activity to register for, but really, you have all the supplies at home to grow your own kitchen scraps. So let's get started. Materials we'll be using today will be found exactly in your kitchen. So you'll see we have standard kitchen knife, scissors, spoons, mason jars. I have a jug of water, and today we're going to start with the celery. Very easy for the celery to regrow. The important thing to note when you do this is you'll want to make sure you have a brand new celery that has, even though mine's a little dry on the end, that has its baby leaves in the center. That's where all your new growth is going to come from. And because of that, that'll help continue your celery to move forward and produce some lovely new growth. So with that in mind, we'll get started. So I have my celery here on a plate. I'm gonna reach for my knife. And really, we only need about 3 inches from the bottom. We'll make a slice, and from there, I'll fill my glass with some water, and then we can give it some time to grow. Give myself a little cut. Straight down and through, nice and clean. Making sure all your equipment is clean. So it's that center part there, that'll be where our new growth will come from. So it's important then that we can put this back in the fridge and use it for whatever recipes we might have or eating it raw. I'll switch containers here now. I have just a 2-cup mason jar here. It'd probably actually work best with a shorter mason cup. You can even use a jelly jar. A little Pyrex container, even a cup. That might, as long as it'll fit the width of the celery, you should be good to go. As you can see, I'm a little tight there. So what I'll do is I'll just take 1, 2 off the outside. That'll give me some actually great strength to hold up my celery. And now I will take my water and fill up my mason jar. The important thing about growing your own kitchen scraps at home is to remember to keep your water at room temperature, as well as letting it sit out. If you're taking it from the tap, let it sit out for 24 hours. It allows for any of the chlorine to off-gas, and it lets the water kind of come and settle itself into being ready, and the plants like it that way too. So I'm just going to take my celery, slide it on in, and I'll keep an eye on it. You don't want the celery any deeper than about 1 inch in the water. And you might want to change your water out daily for the first bit, and then after you might go a day or 2 before you have to change your water. Now we're on to our second project for our kitchen scraps. We are going to be regrowing some basil. We're going to try and rescue my basil today. I have 1 green basil. My second basil is purple, so I'll take the cuttings from each, and we'll share how that process goes with you. But the setup for this is very easy. So as I said, we have our basil here. I have some scissors that are extremely clean. I also have my water that has come to room temperature, as well as it's sat for 24 hours to help it off gas from the tap water chemicals it might have in it, including chlorine. I also have a container to catch my water in case I spill, and a mason jar here, 2-cup mason jar to help hold that water. So let's take a look at our basil plant. Our goal is to take a piece that would have about 3 or 4 inches for me to snip. I think this one might be my best one here. And then from there, after I snip it, I'll be able to put it directly in the water. And our goal here is to start roots, and the water actually helps the plant spur itself to produce roots on its own. So sometimes in the summer I'll do this as well on our deck. Instead of having flowers in the pots, what I'll do is I'll actually cut some mint, put it in mason jars, and that would be our floral accent on the deck, on our tables. When I do that, it actually does root itself. They're such prolific growers. And with all hopes, this basil will do the same. So as you saw, I took a segment, has itself some new growth coming through, but I don't have any leaves that'll sit in the water. So we don't want it to rot while it's in the water, but we do want it to try and grow and spur itself some new roots. So now I'll just put this to the side for a second. I'll turn my plant and we'll see if I can get some more from the purple. It's so lovely and fragrant. We want to make sure we're able to do our best with what we have. So you'll see here I've got myself a nice clean stem that we just clipped off of the plant. We've got some decent leaves started. So this is our efforts to have the water help the plant grow some roots. So I'm immediately putting it in the water, and we'll keep an eye on it. Does not need any direct sunlight for our plants to spur their roots. What you'll need is just a regular kitchen counter, indirect lighting, and making sure you're keeping an eye on the water. You're wanting to change it out at first, maybe once every day for the first couple of days, and that's what I'll do. And then after, it might be able to go and you'll start noticing some spurs coming off the end of the stems. And then you'll continue to keep an eye on the water. You can change it every 2 days. And that's how you start to propagate some new herbs. Ever go to the grocery store and pick up a bag of the bean sprouts there, and by the time you get them home and wanting to use them the next day, they're already rotting, or they've gone watery and they're no good for your recipe or new stir fry you want to try? Well, I've learned that sprouting my own bean sprouts at home has been one of the best things I could do. It's easy, it's simple, just takes very few ingredients and a little bit of time. So a little pre-planning will get you a head start to grow your own bean sprouts, basically in a mason jar. So today we have for our list of supplies for kitchen scraps is a bag of mung beans. I have a spoon to help me measure or portion out my beans once I get them ready. I have a light piece of 100% cotton, clean. We'll be using that as a filter to let air in. I have myself a large mason jar, 4-liter mason jar, and then I have a container here to help me with my pouring the water so I don't make a mess. And we'll get the process started. So for to make your own bean sprouts, what you have to start with is soaking your beans first. So this is a little bit of a longer process to have this happen, but it's very much gratifying once you start seeing things grow. This is a great activity to do with your kids, your neighbors, your grandkids, nieces, nephews, anybody who wants to kind of see the progress. So what we'll start with is I'm gonna open my mason jar. And I have my bag open already. So I'm gonna take 3 tablespoons of, and it doesn't take a lot to get this started, to make a lot. So 3 tablespoons of beans, otherwise known as a 1/4 cup, if you'd rather. You'll want to wrap your beans up so you don't end up having them rolling all over the floor on you when set open. And our first step is to bring our bowl over, bring our water in, and we're gonna rinse these beans off. Like I said, water can get everywhere. Now, I've mentioned this before in previous videos, but it is important to make sure that your water has come to room temperature and it's sat for at least 24 hours before you start using it for growing your own kitchen scraps. I've just been shaking the beans around just to rinse them off. And what I'll do now is I'll pour away the water. This is just to get any initial dust off the seeds, kind of get them prepped, let them know that we're going to be doing some business together and that they can start the process. So from here, what we're going to do, if you can notice inside there, they're a little sticky, but we're going to start with soaking the beans overnight. So like I said, this isn't a fast process for growing the bean sprouts. So if you do plan on using them, you might want to give yourself a week and a half to get this started. And you'll have the crunchiest, the tastiest, and the most vitamin-filled bean sprouts you've ever experienced. So really, the first initial soak, I've only filled up the mason jar by a quarter. The beans are gonna sit in there nice and tight. The next step is to keep the airflow open. So I've taken the insert of my mason jar lid out. I find you could probably do this as well with other containers at home. I have a lot of mason jars at home, so this is what makes it easy and convenient. But if you had something of a pitcher, I've done it even with a canister set, but something that you can then have a cloth cover the top to allow for airflow. And that's important because you don't want the beans inside as they grow to get stagnant, because that's will help promote the rotting process, and we don't want that to happen. And this here is just, I'm a sewer, so I had some scrap fabric left over. This is just 100% cotton broadcloth. It's very light. You might even be able to see some light come through there, but that's enough to have air transfer. So your mason jar will look a little tidy. You can keep that on the cupboard for 24 hours. No direct light for this project at all. The bean sprouts don't need it. Often the direct light is meant for their chlorophyll photosynthesis production, and bean sprouts don't need that. So after this first initial soak, you won't actually have them sitting in water anymore. You'll be just rinsing them every day, turning the jar to allow for them to grow and move, and then keeping an eye and seeing how the process goes. So this is how you get started, and as we go through the process, we'll show you how it changes. Welcome back. It's been about 2 weeks since we've started our kitchen scrap growing project, and you'll notice my celery has been doing quite well. So if you'll remember correctly, we had a full stalk of celery. We did a nice clean cut through, making sure we had our centers available for the growing portion, and then just set it in water about an inch down for the root to pull up the water, and it was able to take itself forward. Now, you'll notice here that some of my older celery pieces have started to decay a bit. In order to maintain our new growth, we'll want to pull those off so that we don't have any mold building up on our new sprouts that are coming through, because then we'll just have ourselves a mess. So it's just a matter of taking this out of the jar, pulling off the exterior, keeping in mind that yes, we started to grow some roots on our celery. Now, we could probably keep this in water for another week or so. These roots will mature some more, and we'll be able to transfer this whole plant into a pot with soil, and we can maintain it and allow it to grow some nutrients and see how big your celery will turn out. So, in that 2 weeks time, we are also trying to grow ourselves some of the basil that I brought in to see if I had any results, in order to supplement that too, because I thought maybe my basil was a titch too short. I also pulled some oregano out of my garden as well. Now, the oregano were larger pieces, so I feel that that may have been a better result. And you'll notice though, I've got them all here. But if I take this black piece of paper as my background, I'll be able to show you a little bit more detail of some of our results. So just give me 1 second here to zoom in and focus. Can you see that? I'll start pointing it out with my finger. Very low here on the stalk. I have a few tendrils of roots coming out. So I have them on both sides. This has been my best result for the oregano. But yeah, my second piece wasn't so great. But that doesn't mean I didn't have some good results with my basil. I am starting to get some nodules down here, but those nodules will result in me getting some new leaves growing. So I may not have been able to get some leaves off of, or roots off of this one to replant it, but this one is now growing me some new basil. Isn't that fantastic? And to think that that poor plant had been burnt most of the summer. Just another lesson to learn. But by giving this piece of oregano with these root starts on them, I would say another week and a half to 2 weeks in the water, changing it out periodically. I bet you I'll have a nice root system that I can then just plant into a pot with soil and then be able to enjoy my fresh basil and all of my cooking throughout the winter. All right, everyone, now for our final item, if you'll remember, we had a mason jar of 3 tablespoons of mung beans that we soaked for 24 hours. And then all we did for the next 4 to 5 days is rinse them off and let them grow. You'll see I have so much bean sprouts now that I've got enough for a stir fry or a raw salad. I have bean sprouts to put in my wraps for my lunch. I can mix it in with my microgreens and have myself a delicious combination of flavors and nutrients. You'll notice when we first did our video, we talked about not needing any light for our mung beans. I did have some light, so I did end up developing some leaves. I probably could have started harvesting this about 3 to 4 days ago before the leaves really took hold. They're harmless, they're edible, so go ahead. If you don't care for the looks of them, feel free to pinch them off. I've also started growing some roots on my bean sprouts. So if worst comes to worst, I could actually plant this in a pot of soil and get myself a full complete plant. But my plan is just to eat these raw. So what I'll do, if you don't care for the looks of them, this is edible. Might be a little bit on the tougher side, but just pinch that off as well. And there you have yourself your traditional bean sprout